Hallo Laura Zalenga, willkommen auf VH Berries.
Hello! It's so nice to hear you say my name actually correctly. It rarely ever happens.
How are you doing these days?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very excited, very grateful. I saw that in 2020 you created a self-portrait that was made on video calls. We should probably do the same.
That is true. I almost forgot about that. That was so much fun because I think normally you really are so limited by you need to see the person in front of you, and that really was like a liberty to say we can do that with someone who's on the other side of the planet. So we could definitely actually do that.
How funny it must have been, because sometimes what you're seeing on the screen is not really what the other person is also seeing.
Absolutely. That was really one of the difficulties because I think it was mirrored, and we at one time did that with several people, and then it was like I saw one of the other people in the top left corner, but that person themselves saw themselves in the bottom right corner, for example, and then it got so complicated to tell them how to interact if the other people don't see what I see at all. It was really interesting and a challenge.
But the thing that I really enjoyed, Laura Zalenga, is that you always bring this artistic side, because of course on the social media we've all seen the Zoom prank, for example, on the teacher. But personally, you like to bring some style and minimalism.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's like two components that I really like to work with. So on the one hand, trying to, of course, think about things in a little bit of a different way, as whenever that's possible. Of course, it's not always, you don't always have that idea, but to, think about it in a little bit of a new direction maybe. And then I think I'm always striving for making my images visually as minimalistic as possible. So really reducing it to the main things that I want to talk about and reduce all the rest as much as I can. Of course, sometimes I fail and sometimes it works out, but I like to do that and really kind of cleaning up the scene, maybe.
We can summarize this in 4 words. Do less, not more.
Yeah, definitely. That sums up pretty well.
Laura Zalenga, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and yourself? Because I personally believe that you are in a sort of quest.
Oh, how so? What do you mean with a quest? Before I answer that.
A quest to better find yourself. I mean it in a more spiritual way.
Definitely. Well, so the journey started, I guess, when I was around 18, and I first somehow had my hands on a camera and really enjoyed taking photos, and actually got interested enough to apply to photography schools with a very bad portfolio, looking back at it today. And none of the photography schools accepted me, actually. So I was a bit frustrated, but everyone around me said you cannot wait another year till you can apply again. So instead I applied for architecture, which I really, really like, but not as much as photography. And I got in immediately in all 3 schools that I applied for, which was I was thinking that's an interesting twist of destiny, that the one thing that I want was not, I couldn't get in, and the one thing that I didn't want so much, I got in. But anyway, and then I did 4 long years of studying architecture and having sometimes fun. And after that, I was so incredibly desperate to be a photographer that I put all my energy and all my passion and everything into it, and right away, lived as a self-employed photographer, and I'm doing that till today. And that's kind of 7 years or something, I think.
You pointed something very interesting, which are the failures at the beginning, because they are very important. They've made the Laura Zalenga that you are today.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, I think there's almost nothing bigger that you can learn from than mistakes and failure. I mean, for me, it was like, or I think maybe detours sometimes describes it better than mistakes or failure, because I think that's such negative words maybe, but I think detours so often I think bring something that you of course weren't looking for, but that still adds so much to your journey. And that's why I think, yeah, studying architecture definitely taught me some things, and it absolutely, without that, I would have never ever had that much passion to actually try to be a photographer in the end, if compared to if I would have just gotten it into those schools and it would have been an easy path. So I think that was one thing. And then, I mean, I don't even know, once a week or something, there's something that happens where I absolutely fail and do things completely wrong, and then I learn from them. And then first it doesn't feel good, but then it definitely helps me to grow. And I think that also counts for like so many images where I failed, the concepts where I failed, edits where I failed, and learned from it.
You mean that the accurate word would be redirection, exactly when you want people to redirect themselves from selfies to self-portraits.
I guess that is a very big topic for me, because it still sometimes happens that like people write something about my work and they say I'm taking selfies, and then I'm sitting in front of that article and I'm like, no! Or like, well, I sometimes do take selfies in front of something pretty and then I send it to my mom. That's what a selfie is for me. But I take self-portraits, and to me that is like, the difference to me is like day and night, because the one thing is like very quick and yeah, spontaneous, and it might mean something to you, but you probably didn't put like your blood and sweat into it. While the self-portraits, at least in the way I understand them, take like a lot of effort and often planning, and they have really your emotions in them. They have your story in them. It takes quite a while to make one of them. And yeah, my main example that I always use is that I compare it a bit like in fast food and in a 5-course menu, which I'm not even judging on a fast food, because sometimes having fries is amazing. And there might even be like very, very difficult fries that take forever. But the main fast food fries are fine. It's just something completely different than someone cooking a 5-course menu. And then someone says in the end, great fast food. That's a bit like how it sometimes feels to me when someone says, oh, you're the girl taking selfies. And I'm like, no.
For these self-portraits, you are ready to go on the trees with a dress and a remote control to activate the button on your Sony cameras.
Definitely. So yeah, I guess it's not always a dress, and it's not always like with a remote control, but basically I'm almost all the time. No, that's also not true, but I really, really love to take self-portraits in trees. And of course, sometimes it varies what I work for that, and sometimes I have like a remote control, sometimes I just have, because it's sometimes not possible to hide things, sometimes I have my phone as a remote control, sometimes it's a little like remote control, like an actual remote control, and sometimes I just have to run because that's the easiest thing and have the self timer set on my camera. But basically, yeah, I like that complete action of running to something and taking that self-portrait and being completely independent. And also, of course, the challenges of like, yeah, how do I do that if I'm in the tree and my camera is somewhere else, or in a frozen puddle or something like that? I think there's really a magic to that.
Because Laura Zalenga, in the past, I had so much problem linked with the focus of the cameras, and you are doing this with so much confidence. But that is because you have the Sony app on your phone that allows you to see in real time what is happening.
Yeah, so that definitely changed a lot, because when I started, I really had like super tiny cameras and I put them on a tree stump, for example, and put it on self-timer and ran. And then very often the focus was somewhere else than me. Of course, it also is something about practice that really, really also helps. And then, of course, nowadays with the technique where you can have like an app on your phone where you literally see what the camera sees, and you can even like with a touch on your screen set the focus. That's almost like a little magic. But I also really want to encourage people to say the other ways are also possible, and you learn a lot from doing it the old-fashioned way, where you don't have that technique on hand, and where you just have to also learn a bit and give it form of like feeling wise, and sometimes maybe also have to do a bit of a trial and error and learn from that. So just it doesn't always need to have the most advanced technique, but of course it helps and it makes things very nicely easy.
And with these most advanced techniques, you literally mean that you could take self-portraits with the eyes closed because you are at this level of excellence.
That's actually so interesting because I never tried that. I mean, I often, when I put my camera on self-timer and I have nothing in my hand, I'm just going somewhere and I know I have 10 seconds, then I just close my eyes actually to feel what I want to put into my pose, into how I sit, how I stand. But I guess I would be self-confident enough to just do the whole process with my eyes closed. Also, it's a nice challenge. Maybe I should try that.
But this is also a little bit scary. But concerning these very specific self-portraits that you're doing very often, I really like your approach because for you, this is a type of medicine. It's the word healing and cure almost.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also why I give that's why it's a bit complicated to do this in short, because I give talks about the healing power of self-portraiture, but they're like more like an hour or something. Because I think we underestimate that it has the power of being almost like something like meditation, where you actually purposefully spend time with yourself in a very pure way. If you really sense it like that, if you're not trying to, I don't know, play something, if you're really trying to come from inside you and put that into an image and spend that time just with yourself, exploring what you actually want to show and what you want to express. To me, it is really a super magical experience of understanding yourself better and of accepting yourself more. And just spending silent time with yourself. I think only people who meditate probably have an idea of what it feels like.
I am very curious, Laura Zalenga. When you mean that this is a cure and a medicine, is it the process of taking these pictures, or is it more the fact to seeing it? For example, if you put your own self-portrait in your wallpapers, or if you do some prints?
I think for me it is a process. It is because there's definitely a lot of self-portraits that helped me a lot that no one ever saw. Of course, it is nice hearing later that other people felt something when seeing it, or that other people were inspired to also take self-portraits and also found some healing. But to me, it is definitely a process. I often, and especially in times when I was not well, to me, it was a bit like I could put some of the weight that was weighting me down into those images. And then when I'm in a better state, I can come back to those images and I can visit that feeling, but it's not so much part of me anymore, if that makes any sense.
Because one of the process that is common for all the humans, for sure, is the process of aging. And you've done a very fascinating work about this called Beauty of Age.
That is definitely, I think that is my favorite project I've ever done so far. That was for something like a scholarship from Adobe. It is called Adobe Residency, where you have basically support and funding for a year to do a project of your dreams, and kind of like a career accelerator. And I spent that year photographing and interviewing people between 80 and 100 years. And it was super, super magical and intense. I cried a lot and I laughed a lot and I learned insanely much. It was, I mean, when do we ever talk to people who are like 3 times as old as us and have so much more life experience, who witnessed like wars where I never witnessed anything close to that, luckily, of course, where they just know so many of the ups and downs that happen in life. And there was, of course, also magic to many of these people were like lonely, and it was so beautiful that they could give me wisdom, and then still in the end they were thankful for my time that I spent with them, while I definitely like need to be the person who needs to be thankful because they shared life experience with me. And I think that is one of the most valuable things that you can share with someone in life.
Reminding people that beauty has no expiration date.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was, in the beginning, that was actually my motivation to say, we're so taught to think that between 20 and 30, that's when people are beautiful. And after that, it's going downhill. And with the portraits I took, I was really hoping to show that we can all look, hopefully, I mean, if we get old, then we can like happily look forward to a time when our beauty will consist of like lines and like unevenness of our skin that tells the stories of our life. I feel like the more wrinkles, the more spots or something someone has on their skin, the more I think they can, their body like has stories and can narrate something about life. And I was really hoping to contribute a tiny little bit to our vision shifting a bit and seeing that is incredible beautiful. Also because so many elderly people said they see no beauty in themselves, like literally none. And I was really hoping to make them see that there is a crazy amount of beauty actually.
Yesterday, Laura Zalenga, when I took a deeper look on this project, it gave me the idea to listen to the soundtrack of the novel and movie The Little Prince, made by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, because there is a quote that says that what is essential is invisible to the eye.
Yeah, that is so very, very true. Because, yeah, as I said, I started it with the motivation to show that wrinkles are beautiful, but like pretty soon in the project, I realized that the actual beauty, the massive amount, the even bigger beauty these people have is 100% invisible, because it is the things they gave me in their words and in their time they spent with me, in their like patience, in their satisfaction with life. And that was so inspiring to realize that so many of these elderly people got to like a calmness and a satisfaction with what they all got in life, even though, and then I think that is so important, I feel like all of the people I interviewed had like really, really hard lives. Like you don't want to swap with them at all. It's like they all had like crazy losses, such hard things to carry, and still they were thankful, happy, smiling people who really gave you hope, I think. And yeah, all that wisdom they also shared with me, it was like, yeah, invaluable, I think. And also just a tremendous amount of beauty.
Absolutely. And that's why I mentioned the word journey at the very beginning, because they are giving you all the answers you need concerning so much areas of life, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was also interesting to me because, of course, I came there with like a camera and a microphone, and I often just asked them for what were the best moments in your life and what were some of the harder ones. And they openly shared so many stories from their life, and of course, within those stories, they are very personal and very like unique. But of course, you can put so many like metaphors into what happened to them. You can like abstract it and learn so much for your own life, of course. And I think, of course, the biggest thing that it can teach you is like gratitude, because yeah, just seeing what these people experienced and what they made out of it and how they dealt with it is, yeah, something that otherwise I think only actual life experience can teach you. And it was so nice to hear that, yeah, from people who are definitely going towards the end of life.
I really like this sentence that you wrote. The unseen wisdom and advice on what is important in life, but we rarely ask for it.
Yeah, I think that is, yeah, also one big thing I realized during that project, because a few times there were people who said the worst thing about getting old is not that you are physically weaker, that you are maybe more often ill and that you have to accept help. The worst part, they said, is that you feel useless and that you feel like a burden to society and to people. And I think that kind of shows the way that we forgot maybe that the elderly people in our society are a super essential part, and that the younger generations can, even if times change, of course, they will not teach you something about computers or crazy new technologies, but some things in life, I think, don't change, like the bigger, I don't know, more abstract values, and they can teach you things about that. But I barely ever meet someone who says, I had a conversation with an 80, 90 or 100-year-old person. While I guess it would be possible, but it's not something that we seek anymore. And of course, there's not often several generations living in a house anymore where you can just go upstairs. So yeah, I feel like it just doesn't happen anymore. And I think both sides lose so much from it not happening.
Laura Zalenga, you just mentioned, for example, that some of these elderly had very tough and difficult stories. Is it that type of experiences that pushed you to be very active, for example, in activism? I saw that you are always and oftentimes reposting some news, for example, right now concerning Afghanistan or other social and political issues.
I think I already had that urge before that project, but it definitely enforced it more. I think with many of the things that I want to bring attention to are, for example, animal rights or LGBTQI plus rights, things like that. And I think that was both, for example, not so important in the lives of the people I interviewed. I guess probably because they were growing up in times of war, and I guess if you're fearing to die, then that is your biggest problem. But I think right now, and also especially when we're looking at problems in Afghanistan right now, that is a good example of like, if you're in a risk of war or like, yeah, other kind of deathly threats, then that still happens today. And we, need to speak up about things like that still, because I guess we still didn't reach a time when peace is a thing all over the world. And I think it's a constant struggle for me to feel like there's so many topics that you kind of need to speak up about. And of course or at least I'm no expert on any of those topics. And I think, and I know that from many conversations, that it often feels like I can't change anything about it. And of course it's kind of overwhelming sometimes, but I guess the least you can do with having an audience, which I think comes with a responsibility, is like talk about things and try to make people aware of things. And of course, educating yourself, which I'm busy with, I guess, in the background and trying to educate myself and trying to live up to my own values and my own like standards that I want to live up to, which of course is a struggle itself and definitely not always possible. But yeah, besides that, I like to, and I would definitely want to do that more, to speak up for all those who are less privileged than I had the crazy luck to be.
You are a very inspiring artist and photographer. Thank you so much, Laura Zalenga.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.